On this week's podcast, I have a special guest coming to talk about building a remote virtual CFO firm. Jody Grunden is the co-founder and CEO of Summit CPA Group, the leading provider of virtual CFO services for creative agencies, as well as one of the largest virtual CFO firms in North America. He's also an industry speaker and a published author. The author of Digital Dollars and Cents, Jody literally wrote the book on helping digital companies create a financial roadmap to success. He also wrote a book about building an all-virtual CFO firm on the cloud. I was so honored to have Jody on the podcast today. I actually listened to his podcast. We will link it in the show notes so that you can also take a listen. But it was just like a coffee chat, a conversation with two firm owners, one a very small one, that's me, and one a multi-million-dollar firm owner. And it was amazing just being in the room with him. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I do or did. And I'm planning to have him back on the podcast to talk more about building a team, building a virtual CFO firm, all that good stuff. But we dove into what it's like to remove yourself, what it's like to grow. He just went through a merger. We talk about the best place to start when deciding to offer virtual CFO or advisory type services, the number one question to ask your clients on their meetings, and it's simpler than you may think. And we just have a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy being a fly on the wall for this one. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena Shoup. I am a CPA and mom of three, and I'm running a virtual bookkeeping business mostly from my home. You're in the right place if you're a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you know that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies to help you start and grow a bookkeeping or accounting business, I hope you stick around. All right. Welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast, Jody. I'm super duper excited to have you here. I'm a listener of your podcast. So would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. Do you want the small version or the big one?
It doesn't matter. You can go either way.
Okay. I'll go to the small version.
Okay.
So basically, I run a virtual CFO firm. We've been doing that since 2002. So it's been a long time. So we've been doing it for a long time. The virtual CFO practice actually kind of rolled right out of our accounting practice. We had a traditional firm for about 2 years, and really didn't think that was it wasn't fulfilling. So it was something we had to kind of change and do something a little differently. And so about 2004 is when we actually rolled out the virtual CFO side, meeting with clients, virtually, meeting with them on a regular monthly basis that time. And sometimes we did some bookkeeping with it. Sometimes we didn't. It was a little based on forecasting, that sort of thing. And we can talk about that in a little bit here. But then we went fully remote in 2013. Actually, it was probably 2013, 2014 is when we went fully remote. So we basically kicked everybody out of the office, started, they all work from home, and we kind of went from there. And so we've been doing the remote work for about 8 years or so, somewhere in that ballpark, and have grown in size tremendously. So our growth since 2010 has been, we double our size every 3 years. So since 2010, we've doubled our size. So we went from having nothing in 2002 when we started and only having 1 or 2 clients to this year we'll do probably about 12 to $14 million in revenue, somewhere in that ballpark. So it's really grown dramatically, and it's all subscription based. We've been doing that for since 2004. We've been doing subscription based billing for the whole time, no accounts receivable, 100% just zaps their account every Monday. And it's been a cool process, a fun ride. And the fact that we're virtual, it just made it a lot made it cool, made it a lot funner to have, not have to going to work and all that kind of good stuff. And that's kind of where we're at today, I guess.
Awesome. So, I have so many questions now. That's why I love having people introduce themselves, because then I start thinking of questions and then we can just take the interview wherever it goes. So you started out, like you said, as an accounting firm, and then was it that you guys were just not, and at this point, when you decided to switch to CFO services, how large was your team?
Yeah, great question. The team was probably 3 people.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
partner, the receptionist, and me, that type of thing. So it was a very small firm. When we started off, we wanted to do, well, basically what kind of backing up a little bit. I left another firm. I worked in public accounting for a little bit, worked at Crowe Chiswick, and then I worked at BKD, one of the offices they actually bought out. And then I worked for a manufacturing company. So I left both public accounting because of the hours and the long work. I didn't really want to do that. I just didn't feel like I fit in. And so then when I went to the basically the manufacturing company, it was fun. It was exciting, but then it really got boring because it was like the same thing over and over every month was the same thing. It was like Groundhog Day type of thing. And so I got an opportunity to work for a small regional firm and open an office for them. I thought that would be really cool. But when I did that, I just realized that, hey, this wasn't what I was looking for. And again, now I'm kind of wondering what am I doing out here? I've got this accounting degree and I don't really fit in. It's not something that I wanted to do anything with. And so I thought, well, I'll leave and open up my own firm. And so when I did that, I still didn't know. I had kind of the idea what I wanted to do. I'm a huge eMyth subscriber. I read the books and read all their books back then, and I really wanted to process something so it was bigger than what we were. And that was the big key is I didn't want to make it the Jody Grunden CPA firm. Yeah. Or at that point, I hired my now partner right out of that. So I didn't want to be the Grunden and Hale or the Hale and Grunden CPA firm. That was that was not the idea. So I wanted to be bigger than us. And so that's when we named Summit CPA Group, although it was just 2 of us at that point, and I hired Adam, my partner, right out of college. So it was someone right out of college and then me starting a firm up. And so the only thing we could do initially was the traditional stuff like tax returns and stuff like that, because we really didn't have a client base. And so we had a few clients that I had personally, that friends and family and, all that kind of stuff, and some small businesses. The manufacturing firm that I worked for, they wanted me to continue doing their stuff. So the cool thing about that was their tax return was pretty big. It was like a $30,000 return. And that was huge way back then. It's huge now, but it was huge way back then. And it's really kind of how I started the firm and had the money to actually pay for Adam's salary, because I didn't take a salary for the first, couple of years. And because I was basically bootstrapping the entire thing. And so, so a lot of excitement there, and we had to kind of really do everything. I couldn't afford to buy a big, I couldn't afford to have a huge office, or couldn't afford to have any of the stuff that you would see in a typical firm. So I had to kind of do things as lean and mean as I could. And so with that, Adam and I answered the phones probably for, probably 3 or 4 years. It was whoever's up next gets the phone, the next person calling type of thing. And we really kind of worked the existing client base to where, taxes, and for 2 years, taxes was like, yeah, I hate taxes. It was just really boring, not something I wanted to do. Clients hated it. Billing process sucked. Everything was still kind of broken on the old accounting system. And that's when we're like, hey, let's do something that is exciting for clients, something clients actually want to come and meet with us about. And, with that, the first thing we did is cash flow. And cash flow at that time, again, we only had the 3 people. We had a receptionist / office manager person, and then we had me, and then we had Adam. And so we started doing cash flow forecasting. And that was just simply the 13-week cash flow ins and outs of money coming in, money going out. And we sat with the client for a half an hour to an hour a month. And they loved it. We incorporated it as part of their monthly meeting. We made a monthly meeting. So we forced clients to actually meet with us. So the one thing we didn't want to do is just send them financial statements at the end of the month or anything like that. And so we met with them. We reviewed the financials for a little bit, but then we really kind of forecast. We really focused on the cash flow. And clients got really involved. And for us, it was a simple process. Everybody in your audience is going to understand how to do ins and outs. It wasn't a cash flow statement. We don't get into that, but it was true cash flow. Yeah. And the clients loved it. It was great. It gave them the insight that they really never had before. They had the QuickBooks, they had the financial insight that, the QuickBooks spits out, but for the most part, it was a new thing for them. And so the clients were like, hey, could we meet more often? And we're like, sure. And so, what are we going to do now? So then we provided that same cash flow meeting every single week as part of our meeting. And so the clients, again, had that big, they had the forward looking, with their cash immediately. And then we were like, well, hey, let's make this even more robust, and let's add long-term forecasting to it. And that's when we did that. So we added long-term forecasting. So we were looking at, a couple months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, however far out we thought was pertinent to the client. And we really started working with the clients on developing this, what we call now virtual CFO service. We started in 2004, and that's kind of how it evolved. And with that, we found out quickly that just by putting it on a paper and creating that roadmap for the clients, they kind of drove right to that destination, which was pretty cool. Whereas before, they're just kind of going along and really weren't going anywhere. They weren't losing money, they weren't making money, but they just were just making enough to pay the bills. And typically, I always had that fear of, hey, do I have enough for salary and stuff? But we actually created the roadmap and showed them how to get out of, where they're at to where they could be, type of thing. And we put it in not financial jargon terms. We put it in, hey, here's how many trucks you have to get through a repair shop, each month, or here's what the average truck has to be. Or if you're selling widgets, here's what the widget has to be. And here's how many you have to have. Here's the mix you have to have. And so we really kind of got into how the dynamics of how things actually worked within their company that they could relate to and control. And that's how we drove the forecast through those non-financial indicators. And man, when they realized that, it was pretty amazing, because the lights just turned on. It's like, wow, this is how we make money. I knew this all along. I'm a business owner. I'm a great electrician or plumber or whatever, but now I clearly understand what I have to do in order to get there. And then they started looking forward to the meetings, and they didn't ghost us on meetings. Every Monday they would come in and we'd have a certain meeting topic we would have. Maybe it was going through the cash flow this week, or maybe it was going through the forecast or the financial, but then there was a true purpose behind the meetings, and it really made it, go really well. And then I would say about a third of our clients were like, hey, could you help out with the bookkeeping, or can you help out with this? I'm like, absolutely. And so we do the bookkeeping or accounts payable, receivable, that sort of thing for about a third of our clients. About 80% of them we do the taxes, and I'd say 90% of them we actually meet with them, with a more of a strategic type meeting, like with the virtual CFO.
Yeah. I've been doing meetings with my clients pretty much since the beginning, because like we talked about this before we hit record, but I used to be a controller. So I'm not going to just hand you a set of financial statements and send you on your way. I want to make sure you understand what it means, how to make decisions based on it. So yeah, that's one thing I tell a lot of my students is like, if you just want to level up a tiny bit compared to most bookkeepers, meet with your clients. Even if you don't go through the financials with a fine-tooth comb, you just point out a couple things here and there, and then open it up for questions. Let them tell you what they have coming down the pipeline. And like, it's nice for them to just have another set of ears to bounce ideas off of, because it's lonely for them at the top, especially, you know what I mean? They might not have someone internally that they can have these discussions with candidly.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose. I mean, the idea is not to be overwhelmed on, hey, what am I going to talk about? Or what silver bullet do I have to bring to this meeting here because I'm the smart one in the group, or whatever, you might have that preconceived, self, notion of yourself. But the idea is just going in the meetings with basically an agenda. The agenda is, hey, we're going to cover financial statements, or we're going to cover, whatever the agenda might be. And then always ask questions. The more questions that you can ask up front, it's amazing how that steers the conversation. We tell our CFOs always start off the meeting with, hey, how'd the week go? Or how, what's new this month, or what, it depends upon whether you're meeting with them monthly or weekly or whatever, what's new this month. And it's amazing. Like I just got off a call with a contractor, and he's like, oh, a lot of great things are going on. And so he's telling us all these 5 different things, different jobs that he closed that could be reoccurring revenue for a period of time. And so we popped right into the forecast right away and start plotting these out and kind of doing that, doing that type of a strategy type of thing, like from the very beginning. And it's kind of funny, the hard work that we put together initially for the meeting, including those financial statements put together, we didn't even cover them.
That's how a lot of my meetings go. It's like, all right, well, same thing. I always ask them, like, what's top of mind? What do you have that you need from me right away? So we can make sure we cover that, and then tell me what's coming up. And it eliminates having to ask a lot of questions as you're doing the bookkeeping too, because you already know what's coming. Like, oh, they're doing a launch of this product, or whatever. So it's like when you start seeing it come through, you already know what it is.
Exactly. And like you mentioned earlier, they want somebody to talk to, they want somebody that can relate to them. And so that's the importance of what you're doing is you're just getting to know them. You're making them a friend. You're making them, somebody that you can communicate with and can break things down for them on a fairly simple basis and really help them succeed in their business.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there. So one of the things that you said earlier was that you didn't feel like you fit in accounting. I relate to that so much. And I think that anyone who goes out and starts their own firm probably has that same feeling of like, I don't fit in corporate. I don't fit in an accounting firm. And I have this entrepreneurial spirit that I need and creativity of some sort, even though like I know a lot of accountants don't think that they're creative, but you guys are. So when you went out on your own, did you have, because you kind of already said you had this vision of being a little bit different because you didn't fit in, but how did you get to the point of where you were able to kind of develop your own style and learn how to communicate well with clients? Was that something that you did pull from your experience in the firm, or did you kind of just like learn it as you went?
I think you kind of learn it as you go. And when you have that entrepreneurial spirit and you're getting out there, you want to do something a little differently and change, the way that people think about a certain area, like ours was accounting. We wanted to change the way people think about accounting. We didn't want it to be the traditional suits that come in. We always talked about it, made fun of them in the corporate world. Hey, these suits are coming in today. Who's taking them out for lunch? That kind of was a conversation. And then when we were in public, it was like, it was like a race to how many hours you could work. And it was like a badge of honor if you worked, 80 hours a week or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, this was just a weird, it was really a weird environment for me to come into. And with the fact that I'm a huge family person, I coach my kids in hockey and, all that kind of stuff. And hockey just happens to be during tax season, so it's like, I've got to figure out how we're going to change things a little bit, to handle that, because I can't have everybody else working really hard and me out and having fun, or whatever. That's just not my personality. So I wanted to kind of change things around. And the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to change the way that we dressed, and, no suits, you had to dress down, jeans, whatever. It's something you'd feel comfortable walking around a manufacturing plant if you had to, or a veterinary clinic, or, whatever your client base might be, something that you feel you fit in with. And so you're not looking like you're like, over or above that person, because you want to be on the same level as that person that you're dealing with. And that for communication, dress, the whole thing. And then the other thing is, so we did that right away. And then the other thing is that this hourly billing notion that we had to bill by the hour was really backwards. I mean, I saw it in public accounting. I saw, in public accounting, we would, you'd track the hours, all that kind of stuff. And then you'd give them the bill, and then you'd think, oh, wow, they're going to be pretty excited because I wrote all this down. And then they're jumping all over your case because all these little things that are challenging. Or you give them a bill and you think, oh man, they're going to really hate this. And then they're like, oh, wow, I didn't think it was even close to that. So you get the wide range from people, and it was just a real weird thing. And so we're like, hey, and that one kind of dawned on me how we're going to change it. Because when my son broke a window, we were playing catch in the backyard and broke a window, I called him to get, how much is the window going to cost? And the person's like, what kind of window did you have? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. and there's going to be $500. And I don't know the exact number, but let's just say $500. And so they came out, and within probably 15 minutes, I had a brand new window in there, and they walked out. And I was happy. I'm like, oh, cool. Here's my $500. Boom. But I was telling one of my buddies that, and they're like, well, they were only out there for 15 minutes. That window only cost like $150, so they ripped you off. No, they didn't. I agreed ahead of time that was $500. If they were out there and it'd take them 10 hours to install, it still would have been $500. And so, why penalize that person because they can do a great job, an efficient job, and quick job? Just, why do that to the person? Why not reward them for that? And so when we looked at the, changing the way that we're doing things, I thought subscription-based billing would be the coolest way of doing it. And nobody was doing it back then. It wasn't even an option. It was always bill by the hour, send the invoice out. And we didn't have the money to be the bank. And so we thought, hey, this would be kind of a cool thing. Let's just tell people how much it's going to cost for our service. And we'll actually bill it to them at that point on a monthly basis, not send an invoice, but just zap their account and see what people think. And we started introducing it to clients. They thought that was great. They loved it. They could control how much, my fee would be. They could call me when they needed to. And it was really kind of a cool thing. And then plus it eliminated all my billing, all my accounts receivable, all my invoicing. I didn't have to do it anymore. It was just simply a monthly zap of a bank account. And then when they wanted us to come in on a weekly basis, we're like, you know what? Why are we zapping their account monthly when we're meeting with them regularly on a weekly basis? So we thought, you know what, for all of our clients, we're just going to take their annual fee there because we now know what it's going to be. We're going to divide it by 52. And that's what we're going to zap their account every Monday. And clients loved it. Since we implemented that back in 2004, we've had not even one client push back against it. They're like, oh, this is great. They love it. They can see what it is, automatically comes out, just less work on their end, getting stuff out. And plus, when we were actually in the cash flow meetings, it was really nice because at times it's like they didn't have any cash in there, but our bill's coming out every month. And so it wasn't, or every week. So it wasn't one of those things where, we felt guilty and we pushed our invoice out and pushed it off again. And now the client owes us big money. Now they're afraid to come to us because they feel really bad. We took that completely out of the mix. And it was kind of a cool thing. So it was one of those things that we knew we wanted to change things, do things a little differently. And then by necessity, the fact that we couldn't be a bank, really focused and pushed us to, to really make some radical changes in the way that we did things, the radical way that we actually build things. And then, how we handled our people, kind of making a traditional, really lousy career and being in tax and working 80 hours a week to something that was, you can work 40, 45 hours a week, 35, whatever, and all year round and take time off as needed. And it was just more of the type of lifestyle that we were looking for and that I was looking for, coaching the kids and raising a family and, being, actually knowing what my wife looked like, that type of thing. If you're working 80 hours a week, you kind of forget after a while. And, with that, it was kind of nice because we had a chance to spend more time with each other. It was just the type of lifestyle that we wanted to live. And I think everybody on this call has that ability for sure. They just have to do it. They have to commit themselves to doing it, and they can create whatever opportunity they want, whatever lifestyle they want, which is kind of a nice thing about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. So you took it from 3 people to now how many people do you have working at Summit CPA Group?
Yeah. So right now we have about 55-ish people. And I say that because we're always hiring. So it's one of those things that I don't know exactly the number. We also have another 15 folks that are overseas that we contract with from the Philippines and from India, that we have them do some of our lower end bookkeeping work. If you total everything together, maybe 70-ish people altogether that we're working with on a regular, full-time basis, they're all full-time with the exception of the contractors. And like I said, it's grown, pretty regularly. The key to the growth is you've got to really set up really solid processes. And eMyth talks about that a lot with their books about how processes are really the key to growth and the key to be able to scale. And without the processes put in place, we would never be able to scale and grow as fast and as quick as we have been, for sure. Keep in mind that when you're growing and you're on a subscription-based model, like most of you in the audience should be on that type of model, I hope. Yeah. And if you're not, get on that type of model, because what it does, you always have that your base number of clients, and you're just adding to it. And that's what you're doing. You're adding to it every year, every month, every every week, type of thing. And that's the idea. And that's how you can actually scale revenue pretty quickly, is having that type of model and having processes in place to be able to support that.
Yeah. And you said selling the process, but are you talking like when you're bringing on a client, you're selling them the process you take them through? Or are you also talking about internal processes? I know that, but can you talk to that whole thing, the process piece?
Yeah. So it's a process. So when clients come on, they're buying you, they're buying the processes that you put in place, right? They're buying the fact that maybe you're the person that's meeting with them on a regular basis. Maybe there's another person that underneath you that's doing all the work. Or maybe there's a person underneath them that's doing their work, so you're leveraging a bunch of things, but you've got to have those processes dialed in and documented. And the important part about that is that, and we're all guilty of this at some point, because we have to be, is that we're all the owners and we're the main point of contact for a long period of time. And so the clients are getting used to speaking with us and so forth, because we are their CFO, are their bookkeeper, we're their main point. But as you scale and grow, you've got to be able to step outside of that and put somebody else in, Jody II or Serena number 2 in there to do that work. And that's where it's important to have those processes put in place, from everywhere from paying bills to doing, cash flow meetings to, whatever that might be. As simple as it is, you want to document and make it so that somebody can walk in your shoes and fill in for you, either on a short-term basis or a long-term basis, and be able to handle having it hand off. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in a firm that you're basically captive to only what you can do personally. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's more of a job than it is a company. But if you want to do that, like I said, it's perfectly fine. But if you want to scale it bigger than yourself, you really got to set those processes up. And those processes come down to even to the point when you're onboarding clients. You should have that documented completely, and it should be a super cool experience for the client to come aboard and go through that onboarding phase, that, the first 8 weeks, that you're, checking in all their, making sure all their journal entries, make sure their financial statements are dialed in up to the date, make sure all their bills are paid, all that kind of stuff that you're documenting doing that first week should be documented and gone through a simple process. And so that's when we talk about processes, that's what I'm talking about there. In order to scale, you really have to have it so that every client is getting that same experience, whether they're meeting with me on a regular basis or Serena, or they're meeting with you on a regular basis. They're getting that same experience from the way the financial statements look, to the way that bills are taken care of, to the way journal entries are done, the communication. Everything should be done to where it's a systematic process. And I think that's the key to growth, is just simply developing those processes, documenting and continue that medium.
Absolutely. So you are now at the point where you're not because we discussed this before we hit record, you're not meeting with most of your clients, but there are still a handful, because we will always have those favorites, right? But what was, I guess, putting processes in place was the number one thing that got you to that point. But did you always have that vision of not being the one meeting with your clients?
Oh, 100%. From day one, it was like, I've got to figure this out. Because I started off, and Adam was the person doing all the work. And then I was the person going out and getting the clients. And then he would do it. And then it would continue on. And then I would meet with some clients. And I gave him enough clients where he could start meeting with some of those clients. And so it was just one of those times that, the idea was, every time I went into a new client, I had to kind of figure out, how can I get myself out of this new client without losing the client? And so that was the key, right? And so then you figure it out, and then you hand that client off. And for a lot of us, we think, man, if we let that client go, they would leave, because they love Jody. I mean, if Jody wasn't there, why would they stay at the company? And it's like, oh, that's not really true. If you're giving them great service and you've got the processes put in place, and you bring in Serena, she's going to knock it out of the park, just like Jody did. And they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to stay with it. And a lot of times we truly feel that, hey, we can't let this person go, or this client's too valuable. If they leave, we'll go out of business or whatever. It's like, well, probably not true.
Probably not. And they're also business owners, and they're trying to do the same thing. So it's a great model for them. Right. And if they're 100%. Not trying to do that, then maybe not the greatest client, because they're not going to grow with you.
Yeah, exactly. So from the very beginning, you've got to have that mindset that, hey, how can I make myself worthless to this engagement? And so by detailing everything out, bringing other people to actually do the work, and then bringing someone to do your work. And then with the same thing with your company, you got to look at it and say, how can I make myself worthless in this company? Because the more worthless I become to the company, the more valuable the company becomes. So it's kind of an inverse relationship there. And so that goes from, basically paying the bills yourself to your company, your own company bills, that comes to your own marketing, your own finance, all the different, areas that you can kind of separate out that, hey, how can I train somebody to do that? Or how can I empower somebody to do that? And be able to step away and let them fail and let them succeed and that sort of thing, and really kind of develop the company itself. And so you do that from the client basis, but then you've got to really do it for your entire company basis. Just step back and figure out, hey, how can I make myself worthless? And it sounds kind of a weird comment, but the more worthless you become, the more valuable you become.
Yeah. I think that's definitely people's egos definitely get in the way of that, because you are so attached to this thing that you've built. And so it's a constant work in progress. It's not something that one day you're going to wake up and be like, okay, I'm ready to be removed. Like, you're going to work on it physically and mentally for forever. Like, I'm sure you still have days where you're like, they don't need me anymore.
Oh, that's pretty much every day.
but that's what you want, if that's what you want to create, you have to definitely put in that work of shifting the mindset.
And it's really difficult because, it's difficult because when I did it, the way I did it is I had Adam pop into all my meetings. So even though he wasn't really doing anything in my meeting, he was in every meeting I was at, with the client. So the clients saw Adam as much as they saw me. And so then when I had to bow out, Adam took over and he did a pretty good job. Of course, not as good as me, but he did a pretty good job, right? But the thing, and I say that facetiously because when you go in and you're seeing Adam make all the mistakes that you think, oh my gosh, why did he say that? Or why did he do that? Well, you circle back with him and the next day say, hey, dude, you might want to do this a little differently here. This is what she meant by this, or he meant by this, or whatever. And it's a great coaching opportunity. And then eventually you develop trust in Adam, and then Adam is now handling the clients that you were handling. So you just kind of handed that off. And so when we do that, even today, most of our meetings, there's usually two people in the meeting. One's kind of there, kind of like that Karate Kid thing, wax on, wax off. And then you figure out how to, hey, what that really means. And just by hearing people talk and hearing people, that whole conversation, you're in the room with them, and it's really easy then to jump off. But the trust factor is there. You got to have the trust in the person that you're handing things off to. And you build that trust by seeing them actually doing it and actually watching them fail, which is pretty tough to do.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that, where people are like, okay, I want to hire, but like, I just can't trust anybody. And it's like, well, there's certain things you can do to start building that trust. And it's not going to happen overnight for sure. And you're probably going to end up with some bad apples, because we all do, because we jump into things too quickly and ignore red flags and whatnot. But if that's your mindset of like, I can't trust anybody, then you're going to be doing everything yourself forever.
Yeah. And you know what, for some people that's okay. But
yeah, I guess.
You can't grow. You just created a job for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So if you're cool with that, that's great. But if you want something more in a job, then really you've got to learn how to empower people, and empower people comes through trust and building that trust.
Yeah. And creating a culture. So that's something that I mentioned to you that I'm to the point where I'm pretty much like not doing any of the bookkeeping work. I meet with a select handful of clients, but my team is managing everything. And it's taken a few years to get to this point. And having built that trust and building the culture and all that kind of stuff. And it's harder than just doing the work, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
It's always going to be easier if I just did everything myself. But then like, you also have to think about like, well, we want to change this industry as a whole, right? So we need to we have the vision, we can create this type of culture for other people to come in and work in, because not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur. So we have that power too.
Yeah. And I think by initially giving the power to the people that's working under you, it really shows them really how to delegate and how to empower people below them. So they see that, and then they carry that. Now they're pushing things down to people below them as they move into that different role, if that's what happens there. So again, it's a continuous stream, but it comes from the top. And the person at the top can't be the person that's hoarding all the work and and doing everything themselves because they can do it quicker, faster, and better than everybody, because of course they can.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's why
they
we
wouldn't be
started
running
it.
the company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got to teach that second person to be just as fast and quick and as good. And that third person and the fourth person, that's really how you build a team.
Yeah. So who modeled that mentorship for you to become that type of mentor, whether good or bad? Because sometimes we become the people we are from bad mentors.
I don't know. That's a great question. I think it's probably, I don't think no one's ever really asked me that question before. And it's one of those things, if I think about it, I don't know. It kind of comes down to, just your own philosophies, really. I mean, I don't know if you really need somebody to mentor you or to do it that way. I think it's just one of those things that, hey, in order for you to be successful, in order for you to grow, you've got to have the mentality that delegation is important. You've got to have the mentality that empowerment is super important. And I've always empowered people in every part of what I've ever done, all the way from coaching back in high school or being a captain on the football team. You always empower people, because you've got to work as a unit, as a team. And I think that it just it's probably always been with me. I don't know if there's any one person I can think about that I've modeled that around, outside just reading a ton of books, which could potentially been where I got those ideas. I don't know. Good question.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you had like some really awesome coach or a teacher or maybe professor or something at some point that was, especially patient or something. I mean, we gather things from all over the place, but books are also great.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because I probably couldn't tell you what one professor's name was I ever had. I probably couldn't tell you, although I read a book probably once every other week or so. I either read or listen to a book. I probably couldn't tell you even a quarter of the book's titles or the authors.
Yeah.
But I'll have different ideas from the books that I will latch onto, which is I think what you're saying there is all the different, noise coming into your head. A lot of times, you don't have to cite the exact term or exact, quote or exact whatever, but the ideas pop in there. And I think that's what really kind of just keeping your mind fresh with different ideas on, listening to different podcasts like this are great. For picking up even one idea. And you know what, if you don't remember that, Serena told you that or had that in her podcast, but you put it into work 30 days later, great. She doesn't need the credit for that. I don't need the credit for that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just part of what you do. You just absorb all the different information you can.
Awesome. So you also mentioned that you have doubled or tripled your growth every 3 years?
We double our growth every 3 years. So
okay.
And that's probably a minimum.
Okay. Is that due to organic growth or acquisitions? Because I know you just went through a merger. So if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I sure will. Yeah. So up until April of this year, everything that we've done was through organic growth. We didn't buy companies or anything like that, or didn't buy books of business or whatever. Just simply building those processes and then really creating the demand for that process, the demand for what you're producing out there, and becoming a thought leader is really the biggest thing or biggest reason for our growth. And so, with that, everything's been organic, up to this point, which is pretty crazy, because that, just, 3 or 4 years ago, we were, only a few $1 million. And now we're going to push, close to the $12 to $14 million mark this year, which is kind of cool. But kind of leading up to what you had mentioned there, we just recently merged with a top 100 accounting firm, Anders CPA Advisors, in April. So we just did it April 1st. And so it's a very new experience right now. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And what they wanted us to do is they wanted us to come in and be their virtual CFO department. So they wanted to bring our processes in place, the way that we do things, from the subscription-based billing to team retreats and everything that we do as a virtual company. They wanted us to bring that into their company and kind of teach them what we've done, and, kind of pull different ideas on, hey, how can they make their company even better by having us as part of it. So it's been a pretty cool merger so far. I love it. The team over there is great. And they're trying to adapt to how we actually do things, because we are fully remote and they're fully brick and mortar for the most part. They do have some remote workers, but for the most part, fully remote. And so that's the fun part that we've got coming up, is really figuring out how to help them grow and help them become, they're already way on their way becoming, the firm of the future for the most part, really kind of accelerating that through bringing us on. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
That's fun. So yeah, I want to point out for the listeners that like the recurring theme here, being able to grow so successfully really is dependent on the team and the culture that you're creating, because you would not be where you are today without that culture you've created. So that's really amazing.
For sure. Yeah. And if you're virtual, that's another big thing. If you're virtual and your team is truly virtual, where you don't actually, they're not in the same city, or you can't grab a cup of coffee or go to the bar after a hard day at work, that type of thing. You really have to create time where you can actually get a chance to hang out with each other on a personal level. And with that, we have team retreats all the time. So we have a team retreat, at least one team retreat once a year. And then we divide the team up in different groups, and those groups meet, once a year as well.
In like regions?
Yeah, well, not really regions, but it's more groups that they're working with. So, like if we break our team up into pods, and so we have one pod that has a few CFOs, accountants that work together, kind of like a mini team within the team type of thing. And so that team will meet once a year, and just to kind of as a working retreat type of thing, but then have fun at night. And they'll, maybe, you could take that, you could rent out some hotel rooms or an Airbnbs or whatever. But the idea is you actually have to format it in a way that you can actually hang out with each other. And that's what really kind of makes the culture the way it is. Constant meetings throughout the year. Every Monday we have a meeting. And in the meeting, we're just talking about fun facts, jokes. We have a joke of the day, fun facts, and topic. It could be your favorite movie and why type of thing. Everybody talks about it, and just to kind of get that team camaraderie together. And then when the retreats come, it's pretty awesome. The people can't wait. It's kind of weird, because every company retreat I had been to in the past, it's like you don't want to go, but you go there anyways. And then you can't wait to leave. And so you're making excuses why you got to leave early or whatever. And at our team retreats, it's the opposite. No one misses them. They love going to them. And when 5 o'clock hits, we break up into mini dinners and go to these dinners. They're hanging out with people they've never met before, which is really cool, because now they're really kind of making the small company big. And then they can't wait to hang out after the meetings. And so we purposely set it up so that the team retreat doesn't start till 11, because that'll give a chance to, for them to go out to the bars if they want to afterwards, or hang out in the morning, or if they need to get some work done in the morning, they can. But the idea is that, hey, this is something that it's more of a bonding thing than anything. And that's awesome. It's a must for a virtual company. And for those that have been virtual for a long time, I'm sure that they're doing some sort of retreat, but you definitely have to spend the money that you're not spending on the facility and give back to your team so that they can, create that culture that you're looking for.
Yeah. Definitely have been budgeting for a team retreat. My team is very small still, but I did get to meet one person in person. I took her to a bookkeeping retreat with me. So there was other firm owners there too, but that was really awesome to be able to connect in person. Yep. And we do a lot of, we have a Slack channel for team building, and we just ask random questions, and we meet every week. I think that's a really important thing as well. And one-on-ones as well. So with your direct reports, super key to be able to keep that culture alive. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain on the podcast. I'm sure that our listeners have gotten a ton of value and some great ideas for scaling a company, whether they decide to do virtual CFO work or not. I'm definitely going to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, I love it.
This would be great.
Sharing for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Serena.
Bye. What a great conversation. I hope you truly enjoyed this. Please check out the show notes for ways to connect with Jody. The best place to connect with him is on LinkedIn. I've linked his profile in the show notes. He also has the Virtual CFO Playbook available for download, which is also linked in the show notes. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget, you can enter to win the workshops bundle by screenshotting the episode, sharing a big takeaway or action item from the episode, and tagging me on social. You can find me at Ambitious Bookkeeper on Instagram, at Serena Shoop CPA on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you again for listening each and every week. I truly appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shoop. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout, and you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Embrace ambition.